Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Cooney and your officials for being today. There's just 3 areas I want to touch upon briefly enough, but I wanted to come back to something that Deputy O'Dowd raised in his questioning about the underspend with the EU presidency, and there was an underspend, I think, also with the OSCE chairmanship.
Yes.
The underspend is in your department, but that doesn't take into account security costs. So when you talk about the total spend, that is taking into account
security costs. That does take into account security
as well.
Costs, yes.
Could you just give me that figure again? That was the underspend in total for the...
yeah, I think it was 25. I just... No, the underspend. I beg your pardon. Yeah, I've got that here for you, Deputy. Just give me a second. Yeah, for the entire budget for the presidency across all departments was 67.3. The outturn was 44, and I therefore think the savings amounted to. That can't be 25.3. Sorry? Oh, the spend was 42 then, so it does work out at 25.3.
Okay.
In terms of savings.
So what happens then, though, to that money, say, in your department where there's an underspend? I mean, does it just go back into the general pool and get redistributed into a different demand area? Is that...
No, it didn't go back into. It just wasn't spent, so it went back to the Exchequer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sorry, does that affect your budget then for the following year?
No, because this was additional money just for the EU presidency. It was outside the normal routine of our expenditure.
And is Justice in a position to bill you for security costs for those?
No. When I give you those figures for the say 67.3,
that's the total government spend.
That was the total allocated across all departments.
So I'm going back to your department's underspend.
Yeah.
So you have money still in the budget. Can Justice come to you and say, well, we want to cover security costs through your budget, not through ours, or?
No. I mean, we can only spend the money for what it was allocated for, okay, which is within our own department. And as I said, the money not spent simply went back to the Exchequer.
Okay, and then there was also an underspend with the OSCE chairmanship.
Yes,
as well.
For similar reasons, pretty much. I mean, the OSCE chairmanship in office was, in many ways, a dry run for the EU presidency. Mm-hmm. A lot of the efficiencies we achieved during the OSCE chairmanship of office. The reason there was a significant overspend was also because we had originally estimated the costs on the basis of previous presidencies. Not really our previous presidency, because the last presidency in 2004 cost 110 million compared to 42 million this time. So you can see there was a significant difference.
Yeah.
We based our estimate really on what other presidencies were costing around about the same time, but as I said, we came in significantly cheaper than most of the others.
That's great, thank you. The area I wanted to focus on first was in relation to the embassy in Tehran.
Yeah.
Recently we announced new embassy openings that we're going to have, but Tehran wasn't in that list.
It wasn't in the list of 8 that was approved by government. But we have it very much, we gave very serious consideration, and I think I can probably speak for the Taoiseach when I said it's an issue he would like to come back to. And we considered it very carefully because there has been an improvement in the situation. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that we took the main reason, frankly, that we took the decision to close Tehran in 2011 was because of the effect of sanctions. We weren't really able to do the kind of business we hoped to do. The situation is improving, and I think the reopening of the embassy in Tehran would be certainly to the forefront of our consideration as things develop. But the feeling was that the situation hadn't moved on sufficiently to be able to justify it at this time.
Can I just ask, though, about the process, because you said 8 approved by government, so was there an initial draft, like where you asked, well, if you go to 20 countries or go back into, how did that?
Well, the way we obviously did our own internal analysis of where we would like to open. That then is discussed with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, because obviously there's not only is there financing, but we needed extra staff to finance these, to staff these new missions. And we had a discussion with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. We reached agreement with them. I mean, in an ideal world, we would have liked to open Tehran too, but in terms of having to choose what your priorities were, it didn't make our final list in this case, but it's very much under consideration.
I mean, not to criticise the department, but I do think that the closing of that embassy was a mistake, and I said so at the time. And I'm just wondering, though, was cost part of the criteria when you were looking at these again? And was cost in relation to Tehran an issue in not moving to...
As I said to you earlier, we were in a situation originally in 2011 where we effectively had to close a number of embassies. Our department could not be exempt from the general cost-cutting that was going on. And we had to be seen to do something to contribute to that. The reason that we decided on Tehran at the time was because, as I say, we had had an embassy in Tehran for some time. The returns in terms of trade had been disappointing. We were in a difficult situation because we were not able to really exploit it because of the effect of sanctions. That's why we closed it. If and as the situation with Iran improves and it's going in the right direction, I think we'd be very keen, if we have the resources, to reopen that.
And when we closed that embassy, did we have a lease on the building, or did we own the building?
We were renting, I think. Yeah, we rented. We didn't
Okay,
have to.
so-
We didn't have to. We didn't have to close it.
And would you know what would be the rough costs of reopening that embassy?
I beg
The
your
rough costs of reopening the embassy in terms of a lease to staff to security?
Well, we will obviously have to rent if we go back in, and probably there will be some fit-out cost because I doubt that we'll be able to go back into the same building that we were in. So we will have to find a new premises. But we would, I imagine, there be renting.
But just to try and get an idea of what the total cost of running an embassy in Tehran might be, I mean, what would this
I think
rough
it was
figure?
about $500,000.
$500,000, okay.
Yeah, everything.
So it would be a question then for the department finding an extra $500,000 per year.
An extra $500,000 and you know, probably to operate in Tehran you'd need 2 diplomats and some local staff.
2 diplomats, would they both be? Would one be a councillor or no?
I would think we'd do a councillor and a 3rd secretary.
Councillor and 3rd secretary. Okay. Thank you. And the other area I wanted to look at, and I've been asking a number of parliamentary questions on this, so you won't be surprised, is the election monitoring roster. Yeah. The election monitoring roster for overseas election monitoring missions. We put in place a new roster in 2013. Can I just ask firstly, though, why was the old roster reviewed? Is this something we do on a regular basis, or had it been around for too long?
We do. What I'm going to do, Deputy, if you don't mind, I have a full answer, but Brendan Rogers looks after this side. Would you like to respond to that, Brendan?
Well, I mean, I think you have to refresh the roster every 5 years or so, and this gave us an opportunity to bring it all together, put together a roster for the next 5 years of appropriately skilled individuals. And as you know, we put together a roster of 200. We had an application of about 263, which was less than we had anticipated. So we went through a written procedure, fairly analytical, looking at 4 different criteria: language, experience, knowledge of human rights, and governance. Went through all of that. We got 200. We had a reserve list. We then had a feedback process.
Mr. Rogers, sorry, does the 200 include the numbers on the reserve list, or are they additional to the 200?
As far as I know, they were additional to 200.
How many might be on the reserve list?
The reserve would be 10. There would be, I think, there was 10 on the reserve list.
So of the 263 who applied, 210 were successful.
Yes.
If we include the reserve list numbers in
Yes.
that. Okay.
And then there was a feedback process, and we got a fair bit of feedback.
Can I just, because I want to just, because I know you probably wrote the PQ response.
No,
So I know I just wanted to pick out parts of the process so I could understand them better. So when you made the public call for applicants, that's done through an advertisement?
To the website.
To the website,
Application
okay.
on the website.
And what were they asked to submit? A CV?
An application form with a CV. With what they've done in the past, looking at languages, looking at their knowledge of human rights, governance knowledge.
So there was an application form and a CV. It's 2 separate documents.
Well, no, they had an application form. They wrote to us asking to be part of the roster and outlining the case.
But some people supplied CVs and some didn't.
Well, I wasn't now on the appraisal, but I think everybody came in with the application form. We invited applications.
Okay. And do those application forms allow for additional material to be provided? Such
Well, I
as a
think
CV?
those application forms could be as extensive as the people wish to have them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as part of the the call for applications, was the intention in that to have an interview process, an interview stage?
The initial, we thought initially we would have an interview process if there was, depending on the numbers of people who applied.
Okay.
The number of people who applied were not as great as we had thought, and we believed then that we could go to looking at the applications, the written applications, to determine the list.
Okay, but is it fair to say that people who were applying did believe there would be an interview stage in which they might be able to flesh out their application?
Well, I think that some of them may have thought there was the possibility of an interview stage, but no full decision had been taken.
Was it only expressed as a possibility?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay, and if we could come then to the 4 criteria in which the applications were assessed.
Yes.
What are those 4 criteria?
They were language, experience, knowledge of human rights, and governance, and they were given equal weighting on each.
Yeah, and I asked a question about
Yeah.
the weighting
Yes.
between, say, for example, experience and language,
Yeah.
and why they have equal weighting.
Why would they have more weighting?
Why would language and...
Because a number of the actual elections would necessitate language. In fact, language, in quite a few of them, you would need to have a language.
Well, I mean, I've done a bit of this myself, and I know from my own experience that you are provided with interpreters in country, but you don't test their language skills.
I'm not sure whether we tested the language skills or
I
not.
don't think you do.
Because in a written application.
Language skills were not tested orally.
No, they were not tested orally.
It's just, I find out that you could give language and experience the same weighting. And experience is clear, and you can check experience. The
Yeah.
person's been on X amount of monitoring missions. You give language the same weighting, and they provided maybe some documentation, but you didn't test it, even though that the monitoring mission they might be going on, they might be found to not have the kind of language that we'd want them to have. I mean, potential embarrassment to the partners.
Well, it would be very much an embarrassment to themselves as well. Eventually, before we would send them out, we would obviously be meeting them, and they would have to provide the documentation. And very quickly it would become quite clear whether they had the language or not. I mean, the issue, I think, with the individual was they felt that language shouldn't have the same weight.
Yeah, but I agree with that individual.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't know why we waited.
Yeah, and we did a review of it as well. I mean, we did look for feedback, as you know. And then we then also had a review process, and we got somebody in externally who had not been available to do the initial appraisals. And in fact, even the appraisals themselves were done by independent people. And we had 2 who came back.
But I find it odd, though, that someone could get selected for, and we're not going to name any individuals, but someone could get selected for an election monitoring roster 5 years ago with no experience, and then after 5 years of very good experience, election monitoring would not be selected in the 2013 panel.
And we went through an independent process to ask an independent assessor, should we have put this person in? And they came back and said, 2 people went to the final review process, right? We went through the feedback, initial review, final review process. 1 person got a couple of marks extra, but the assessment was that the assessment was correct.
Okay.
That was the assessment.
But do you not find that odd, though?
But I don't think my personal opinion, I wasn't involved in it. All I can do is, there was an independent assessment, and then there was an independent review, and then there was feedback, and it wasn't changed.
Okay.
On the balance.
And this roster that we brought in 2013, that will get reviewed again in 5 years' time?
Yes. I mean, look, it depends. If people fall off the roster, it may be refreshed before that. It's for 5 years, essentially. It's for the EU and the OSCE, as you know, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we've had, I know there's been a lot of feedback on this one. But
yeah, and I'm not trying to make a special case for anyone. I was just interested in the process, and I don't agree with that equal weighting. And I think if we're going to put equal weighting to languages, we should be testing it orally, because maybe not necessarily from personal experience, but people tend to exaggerate how good they are at a language in an interview or in an application. But anyway, no, thank you for that. Just the last area I wanted to look at, if I may, just briefly, is in relation to our preparedness for certain eventualities in relation to either Scottish independence or a UK referendum. Do you have a dedicated unit looking at that, or how are we monitoring that situation?
Well, the situation in Scotland, we have a consulate in Scotland who reports back regularly to us, and the line responsibility at home is with our Anglo-Irish division there. We're monitoring this issue very, very closely, and the EU side, we don't have lead responsibility for EU matters now. That's handled over in the Department of the Taoiseach.
Yeah.
But obviously we take a very keen interest in what is happening in terms of British membership of the European Union. And again, our Anglo-Irish division are keeping close eye to that, and also our Europe division, which looks after more general European matters in foreign affairs. I mean, do we have contingencies? The issue particularly the issue of British membership is an issue that's discussed and considered across the whole government apparatus, because it would have serious, we believe, serious negative implications for Ireland if that were to evolve. So that is an issue that is discussed at government, at the Economic Management Council and committee rather, and elsewhere across the board.
Which committee?
Economic Management Committee.
That's the subcommittee of the Cabinet.
That's
Yeah. Okay. But there's no,
as well as of course in the EU Affairs Committee and such like.
Well, I mean, it's good to know that's being discussed at the highest level, but there is, as of yet, no kind of contingency plan or document yet in the eventuality of A, Ireland, B. Is it because we're
Well,
too
I mean,
far off
there have been documents produced, but I mean, I suppose we're not at this stage working on the basis that it will happen. I take your point that is it happening? Could it happen? But you know, I think frankly that's a matter that I perhaps don't have the lead on, and probably goes outside of the remit of the committee here. I wouldn't want to be.
Okay. No, fair enough. And just in relation to Scottish independence, have the department given advice or given a view on if Scotland were to achieve independence, their ability to accede to the EU?
We've tried to stay out of this argument. I mean, we don't have a dog in this. We don't have a dog in this fight. But you've heard the opinions elsewhere. I don't know. I mean, Slovakia managed to stay in the European Union without too much trouble. But if this divorce takes place, it doesn't look as though it's going to be a velvet one. A tartan one, perhaps. But
Yeah. No, I understand that there are sensitivities around it, but I take from what you said. I mean, I understand what you said. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, Scottish independence is an issue for the people of Scotland, and how it happens if it happens is a issue for the people of the United Kingdom as a whole. It's something we've tried not to get involved in.
But it will be an issue for us.
It will be an issue. Clearly, there are implications,
Yeah.
and there will be significant implications for Northern Ireland that we are looking at. But if you like, it's not an issue that we've chosen to voice opinions on publicly.
But it's also an issue in terms of EU membership for us to consider, because an application may be coming in were they to achieve independence.
Well,
so we need to know.
I cannot imagine if Scotland became independent, the Irish government is going to want to veto it. That would not make sense. We would want to see Scotland inside the European Union, whatever way it happens.
I think many other European countries would.
I can safely say that if it does occur.
Okay, thank you. And I had one final area, Chair, if I may, or... I mean, it's at your discretion, Chair. It was just in relation, I mean, maybe, Chair, if you're going to raise it, but it was the prepayment of the UN subs in 2012. If you were to raise that, then I'll happily...
No. Raise it.
I'm happy to answer that.
Yeah.
Look, when I heard about this after the event, I actually thought it was a good bit of business, because it's very, very difficult to predict the size of our contribution to the UN peacekeeping budget. And back in 2010, we had a shortfall of 15 million, and we had to get permission from the Oireachtas to move money around between subheads. I accept, though, that it seems that we infringed public service requirements, and I accept the rebuke, and we won't do it again. But as I said, it seemed like a good idea at the time. We only paid it 3 weeks earlier than we would have paid it anyway, so I don't think it would have made any difference. But I accept that the rules are there for a reason, and if we infringe them.
And Thomas, when you said when you heard about it after the event, so you didn't approve of the payment being made? It was made by someone junior to you?
It was actually officers gave up leave to come in on holiday to do this before the end of the year, and it was done with the approval of the accounts. It was done with the cooperation of the head of corporate services then was, and as I said, personally, I thought it was a good bit of business. If they told me about it, I'd said, great idea, do it. I didn't realise that in doing so, we were crossing the line as regards procedures, and as I said, I accept the rebuke, and a good bit of business it might have been, but obviously it's a wrong bit of business, so we won't do it again.
But it does look.
It won't happen. It won't happen.
It looks like you're rushing to get all of your budget spent before the end of the year, so you can get the same amount for next year.
It looked like that, but as I said, it was taken in the context of a situation in 2010 when we were underfunded by 15 million on the UN budget, and it caused us quite a bit of grief to have to come back to the Dáil to get the Dáil to agree to move money around between subheads. So when we had this money unspent, we had a UN bill come in, a UN bill that fell to be paid within 30 days. It just seemed like a good idea. Obviously it wasn't, but I don't think any great harm was done, but I accept there are rules there.
I think if the SMEs around the country could get paid in the same way from government, they'd be very happy. Thanks, Deputy Murphy.
Thank you.